Hi everyone, can everybody hear me? Awesome. All right, let me make sure I can see everyone. There seems to be people who are here, but I can't see you. No, I think that is everybody right now. All right, can somebody say something just so I know that I can hear you?
Hi, Rebecca.
I think I need to change my setting.
Testing.
Yes, success. So welcome everybody. Can you also all see the slideshow? Perfect. So as you're coming in, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. Where in the world, what part of the world are you calling in from? Do you have a bird of the year for 2020? And if you do, what species is it? And just what's something from nature that you're thankful for today? Welcome, Jasmine. Bird of the year is Junko, and grateful for the fresh air. Welcome, Cheryl. Don't have a bird of the year yet. That's all right. And grateful for all of the great outdoors. I love it. Can't pick just one thing. Welcome, Linda. So as a lot of you know, my name is Rebecca. I'm from upstate New York, and my bird of the year this year is the American crow, which I'm actually very excited about. I heard there last time there were other people who got American crow who are maybe not as excited about it. I was actually really excited about it because for some reason I was specifically hoping that the first bird I would see was a crow, and then it was. So it just worked out, I guess. Linda's bird is a hummingbird. Oh, I'd be curious what type of hummingbird, because where I live, there is only one species of hummingbird, but I know in California there are multiple species. Welcome, Deborah, and the California towhee, thankful for live oak trees. Welcome, Mel, new birder, yay. Grateful for the afternoon rains. Anna's hummingbird, which is year-round. Oh, that's awesome. Hi, Vea. Red-tailed hawks are your bird. I'm grateful for tea and friends and fog. So I will, if anyone adds more things, I will welcome you when you come in. So does everybody have a paper and something to write with? You could also use a voice recorder. So just welcome again officially to today's workshop, which is about your 2022 Bird of the Year. We're doing a mid-year check-in. I had a workshop, actually 2 workshops in December and January about how to find your Bird of the Year. It's very simple. It's usually the first bird that you happen to see in the new year. But you don't have to follow that rule exactly. It's just a fun tradition that I learned about a few years ago. And if you want to pick your bird, you can. It's just the idea of having a specific bird that you're paying closer attention to throughout the year. And let's see, Susan might pick the gray catbird as your bird because of its sweet song. So again, as you might know, I used to teach a weekly workshop called Writing Workshop Wednesdays in the Nature Journal community, which is focused on using words in our nature journal, because a lot of people focus on art, but there's also so much you can do with words and writing. And I just don't have the time and energy anymore to teach a free workshop every single week, but I still want to offer them sometimes, like today. So I'm really glad that you're all here. And just as a reminder, this is, or an introduction, if you've never been here, this is a supportive, non-judgmental space where you can be free to experiment and try new things and learn. And we're all here to support each other. And as Ivea also likes to say, our only rule is to be kind to each other. And actually, is there anyone who would mind being a co-host just to help me keep an eye on letting people in from the waiting room? I know sometimes when I get teaching, thank you, Ivea. Yeah, sometimes when I get in the middle of teaching, I forget to see that there are people waiting to get in. Yeah, and if anyone else wants to also, I'll make you co-host. Thanks a lot for that. So, yeah, we're just getting started. And what's going on in the chat? Yeah, the catbirds are very fun birds. They like to imitate things because they're related to mockingbirds. I think of them as like mockingbirds, but they you can hear sort of other bird songs within their song that they're mimicking, but it's still obviously a catbird. They have a heavy catbird accent, whereas mockingbirds sound super close to the original. So the first thing I want to say today is that it is not too late to get a bird of the year. In fact, funny story, last year, 2021, it was literally New Year's Eve at around sunset, around 4 p.m. And I was talking about, like, I wonder what my bird of the year will be tomorrow. And we were outside and I think a mourning dove flew by and my dad was saying, hey, that's not a mourning dove. Can that be my bird of the year for 2021? And I was like, I mean, sure, it can be your bird of the year for the next 8 hours. You can do that if you want. So we're 7 months into the year, 5 months left. So that's plenty of time to have a bird of the year if you want to get one. So if you don't have one yet, if you want, you can pick one. That's totally allowed. If you want to have that element of surprise, you could pick a time maybe after this workshop or maybe tomorrow morning if you want, and just say, okay, when I look outside, the first bird I see next is going to be my bird of the year for the rest of the year. So it's totally up to you. There are really no rules here. And so raise your hand if you keep a life list or if you've ever kept a life list for birds. Kind of. Yeah, so this is actually my very first life list in my first birding journal from 2010. And I found on the internet this list of birds in my county and printed it out and put it in the journal and started keeping track of which birds I've seen. So for birding, keeping a life list is a very popular thing to do. A lot of people like to just keep track of all the birds they've seen. You know, they know off the top of their head what number of species have they seen in their life. A lot of people like to travel around and see as many species as possible. And this is all wonderful. This is a really great way to do birding, and it can be a lot of fun. But what I want to also say is it's not the only way. You don't have to see all of this bird species. You can even just start with one. And that could be your bird of the year, something that you pay attention to as you see them. Is this how birders learn which birds are related to one another? I mean, it's one way. Like you see in here, they're arranged by group or by family, which is off in field guides too. They're usually arranged by family and by order. Do local Audubons have lists that are place specific? Yeah, a lot of them do. In fact, even at sometimes even at very specific places like the pine bush, it's Susan might know, has you there's a little brochure you can get that has a checklist of birds of the Albany Pine Bush Preserve. So yeah, a lot of places that you go, you can find specific lists. So that even itself breaks it down. It can be make it a little less overwhelming from looking at a book of like, all the birds of North America. And you can find out, okay, what's this list for this specific region or this specific park? You can look up, yeah, like local Audubon, eBird is a great resource. Cheryl put in the chat. Yeah, different parks. Yeah. If you want to find lists, you can find locally specific lists for a lot of places online or at places you go, and that can help too, just to get more of a sense of like, what will I actually see here? And I think that's a good way too, because then you start to get a sense of what the birds are, even before you see them. And so then when you do see something, you're like, okay, I think it might be from one of this group or this family, and you can start to narrow it down. But yeah, good point. You don't assume that you'll only ever see birds on the list. After all, birds have wings. And yeah, as what is it John Muir Laws says, and he's quoting somebody, if the bird and the book disagree, believe the bird, because maps are made by, research is hard to do. And yeah, even just the questions ecologically of like, where does the species live? What kind of habitat does it like? It takes a lot of effort to learn those things. And yeah, we don't know everything about what every individual bird in the world is doing. So they might go to other places. Yeah, exactly. Birds don't read the field guides. Yeah, does anybody have any questions about just life lists and this stuff in general before we go on? You guys are asking some good questions. Just trying to think of where I can find a life list. Isn't there a San Francisco Bird Observatory? Maybe they have one called Goat Suckers. Yeah. Yeah, goat suckers, that's like the nightjars and whippoorwills. There was a myth that they would like drink the milk from goats and steal the milk. I don't know why that myth came to be, because that one's definitely not true, but the name still persists. So yeah, Audubon Society is another great place to look. Or you can even just Google like birds of your area and you'll probably find a list. Yeah, great questions, guys. So no matter if you have 1,000 birds on your life list or 10, if you like watching birds, you're allowed to call yourself a bird watcher or a birder. You don't have to be somebody who, has the goal of filling your life list or traveling to all these different places. And, if the way that I think about it is using our nature journals as a tool to help restore our relationship to the natural world. And, we don't need to worry about competing with anyone. If we like to keep a life list, that's awesome and it's really fun. But like I said, you can even just start with one bird species that you know and start to really get to know it. So just taking a look at the chat. Yeah, more about getting bird lists. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to look up those things. And oh, don't worry about it. I would love to hear how that goes for you guys. So first, I have some prompts to consider and questions to think about regarding the first half of the year so far. And I'm going to have some time for free writing and reflecting on that. And then I'm going to show some questions and prompts for going forward the next less than half of the year. And then I'll give you some time for that. And then we'll have time for sharing and discussion. So for the first half, looking back at the first half of the year so far, just to remind ourselves of our bird of the year, or to start now, what have you learned or noticed so far about this bird species? And if you don't have a bird of the year yet, just think about birds in general. And the things that you've learned or noticed, have you recorded them in your nature journal? Or are there any moments you've observed that you haven't put in your nature journal? Would you want to add them now? There's no pressure to, no guilt if you don't record every single thing, but just something to think about. Is there anything that you have been meaning to put down in your nature journal that you want to remember that you might take the time to do that now? So here are examples. Like I said, my bird of the year is the American crow. So here are a few examples of where the crow has appeared in my nature journal this year so far. So up on the upper left, there was a bald eagle in my neighborhood, and a crow came and perched on the branch next to it. And I was just amazing to really see the size difference between, because I usually think of crows as pretty good sized birds. They're big compared to songbirds, but the eagle was so much bigger, and the crow came over and kind of was investigating. It seemed like they might be wanting to try to scare the eagle away like they do with hawks, but after a few minutes just, I think, decided the bald eagle was too big and didn't want to mess with it, so the crow just flew away and left the eagle alone. Then one winter morning, up on the upper right, I saw a crow fly overhead. It was really cold, and I was just noticing the difference in the lights reflecting off of the crow. And I was like, oh, I can actually tell that east is that way because that's where there's more light reflecting off the crow. And I thought that was a really cool, another way to find our, compass directions in nature. Where's the light reflecting off of a crow's wing? Bottom left, there were, and you can tell, like, again, these the pictures in the nature journal don't have to be perfect portraits or, realistic or everything. I just got this was really hard to draw. There were a couple crows kind of getting into a fight in the middle of the street when I was sitting at my sit spot. And so that was hard to draw, but I just got the idea down. And one was like the deeper, and one was the higher pitch that reminded me of a fish crow, but I think was probably a young American crow because those sound really similar, I've noticed. And yeah, honestly, at first I couldn't even tell that there were three. I thought there were two, but then I realized they were just so in there that there were actually three crows, and eventually they flew away. So I'm not exactly sure what was going on there, but it was really interesting to see that. And then on the bottom right, I got up really early one morning last month, and I saw the fireflies before they stopped for the night. And I saw a bat flying around, and then one of the first birds I saw flying for the morning was the crow flying past, and there was, the last star and the first sun rays coming up, and I wrote a haiku about it that I'm pretty proud of. So those are just, this will be different for you, but I just wanted to share a couple examples, 4 examples of where my bird of the year has appeared in my nature journal so far this year. But then there was one example I didn't write in my journal that I might want to add. I was at a park and sitting with a friend at a picnic table, and the crows, a family of crows, I think, started coming around us. and it seemed like they were showing the young crows from this year like how to go near the picnic tables to find food. Like the parents were kind of like, okay, kids, come over here. Let's show you how to get some food from these areas. So that was another moment of seeing the crows kind of teaching the next generation of crows. Okay, so first question is just what have you learned or observed so far? Let me check in the chat again. Yeah, I have some more about your guys' experience with crows. So another thing you might think about is what was your initial reaction to getting this bird of the year if you got one? Were you excited? Were you disappointed? Has that changed at all? How do you think about your bird now? The next set of questions has to do with place. Where do you observe these birds most often? Why do you think they hang out in those specific places? Do you have a sense of where to look if you want to see this bird? Is your bird even still around at this time of year? Or if they are here, has their behavior changed? Are they doing different things than they were doing at the other time of year? And if your bird is not around at this time of year, that's okay. If your bird of the year just left and you can't see them right now, do you know where they went? Can you use your imagination to imagine them being there right now? What might they be doing? What other plants and animals do they interact with? Are these different species than are there where you live? Is it and okay, shoot. I had a bird of the year, but I can't remember what it was. I'm really glad to see you here today, though. It's been a while since I haven't been teaching my workshops. So, love the toadies. They've moved on, but I think they'll be back. And what does this bird sound like? Do you know the difference between the song and the call? How would you describe the sound, either visually or representing the sounds or describing it with words? And then, have you learned anything about yourself by observing this bird and getting to know it and deepening your connection with it? Are there any metaphors, using our prompt, it reminds me of? Are there any metaphors you can create that apply to your own life? So, for example, one I've heard people say before is like watching a bird nest and a bird make their nest, and that kind of reminding them of the idea of home and they're like making our home or motherhood or those kinds of things, or it could just be about survival or any kind of metaphors of the bird behavior that reminds you of your own life and maybe helps you to process things or understand your emotions in a different way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're anthropomorphizing or we're putting our experience onto the bird, but we're just using that as another way to understand ourselves. So here are all of the questions I just put on. I'm going to put a timer on for, do you guys want to do 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Put up one finger if you want 5 minutes, or put up two fingers if you want 10 minutes for each set. I'll put 5 minutes, and if we want more, we can. Maybe we'll do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes of the next one, and then I can do 5 more minutes for whatever you want, if you guys want that. So yeah, I'm gonna put a timer on for 5 minutes, and yeah, I want to show you all the prompts first, so you can just work with whatever of these questions are relevant or interesting to you. Don't feel like you have to answer all of these questions, but just use this time to reflect on what you want to do. And let me know if you have any questions. About 10 seconds left. All right, that's the 5 minutes. So just wrap up whatever thought you're on right now. You can always add more to this later. So just a couple pointers from what I just did. You can use bullet points, quick notes. You don't have to write full sentences. And we'll have time to share at the end, but just a couple things that I put is that I haven't paid as much specific attention as I had hoped so far, but I do like that it's just kind of this program running in the background. It helps. I feel like I have a bit more affinity for it, a bit more like specialness around crows. And I feel like I will be a bit sad when the crow is not my bird of the year anymore. So it's just a couple of the things that I wrote. So now on to the remainder of the year. What do we want to make a point of doing or paying attention to before our bird stops being our bird of the year? So here are some questions to consider. The first question is about questions. What are you still curious about? And what questions do you still have? Or if you don't have any questions, see if you can think of some. What do you still want to learn or pay attention to before the year ends? And again, if you don't have a specific bird of the year yet, you can just think about birds in general. So for me, one of my questions is that in the winter, when I got my bird of the year, the crows are all in these huge flocks or litters, and every evening they go over, it's like this river of hundreds or maybe thousands of them to wherever it is that they roost. But in the summertime and the nesting season, they split off into families like that. Flock doesn't happen anymore. But I realized that I don't have like a super clear sense of exactly when does that change and when in the fall will it come back. So I realized that's something I could get a better sense of. So I'd like to pay attention to that. When does it start happening again in the fall? And have you used any outside resources beyond your own observation to learn more about this bird? Are there any that you've been meaning to use? For example, there are 2 books that where we talked about the last workshop about bird of the year. Gifts of the Crow is a book I've been wanting to read a long time. And then a couple people from the workshop shared with me about a book called Crow Planet. So I thought, oh, I'll read those books this year to help me learn more about crows. But I haven't yet. So I think that will be one thing I do is look them up and see if I can order them from the library. So some places you might search to learn more about birds. Maybe there are books at your library about your bird of the year. Maybe you could look at the All About Birds website, at least for North America. That's a really great resource from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And maybe there's somebody you know who knows a lot about this bird, and you could just ask them what they know about this bird to get some more information. And then about the song or the call, if you do know the song or the call, you could take it a step further. Do you know why they use certain sounds at certain times? Do you notice any patterns about when you hear these sounds? And what can you listen to going forward? Are there any cultural stories or cultural connections to this bird? They could be very local things too. And if you don't know, do you want to try to find out? So one example that I found for crows, just looking up on Google, is apparently there's a Hindu story about why crows and owls fight. So these kinds of things. What if you made up a new story or a new myth? What would it be about? These sort of, it could be one of these stories about how the world got to be the way that it is, or about anything. or it could be a more realistic story, just of your experience. And finally, what could you do to give back to this species, to support its habitat or its conservation? Maybe habitat gardening, if there's an organization that does a lot of work with it, maybe donating to them, or putting up bird feeders or a bird bath, or even just sharing your stories and experiences to help teach others about this kind of bird. So here are these questions. I'll put onto one side for you. And again, just overall, what do you want to do during the rest of the year before the time is up to make a point to deepen your connection to this bird, even just a little bit before the end of 2022? What are the things that even seem easy, but that you maybe just haven't done yet, like me with getting those books out of the library? So I'll put the timer on for 5 more minutes and choose whatever questions are resonating with you. Starting now. 10 seconds left. So again, just to finish up whatever thought you're on. So we will get to sharing in just a minute. I'll give everybody a few seconds to finish up. You're ready. So I just want to thank you again for being here today. If you enjoy this workshop and you'd like to make a donation, I'll provide a link for that. Any amount is appreciated, or pass it on by doing some kind of act of kindness for somebody else. Another way that, another thing you can also do is, if you're not already subscribed to my email list, you can follow along if you'd like to get updates about when things are going on. And I send tips and advice and things for nature journaling. I also got a couple of free gifts that you can get if you sign up. So one of them is a free mini ebook, Science and Imagination, Exploring Words in Your Nature Journal, which is similar to what we've been doing here today, combining the scientific perspective and our own personal perspective through using words in our nature journal. And I also recently made a nature journal quick start guide, which is probably none of you here need, but is to help you, what are the minimum amounts of things that you need possible. Anyway, I've got the links for that in case you were looking up links really speedily, because I know you do that. But don't worry about that. I've got the links for everything. Yeah, just to help you figure out how to actually get out the door and go have an adventure. So I'll just share those in the chat, and I would love to open it up for some sharing and discussion. Would anyone like to share what is your bird of the year? What are you thinking about? What questions do you have? What have you learned so far this year? What do you want to focus on the rest of the year? And anything else? Let me just get those links in the chat, and raise your hand if you want to talk. Either using your literal hand in your video or the raise hand function. Yvette?
I already knew that I loved red-tailed hawks because of Animorphs, but I love them even more now because those are the birds that I look up to and literally look up to, and then I think, why so serious? And I think of them as being all majestic and serious, and these birds are hilarious. I now, and that's the metaphor, is that I might look all serious because sometimes I get my resting botanist face on, but anybody who knows me well knows I'm a knucklehead, and these birds are too, and I like that about them. And I gather this conclusion because I've begun noticing their calls a lot more. They make this kind of, I can't really imitate it very well, but it's the stereotypical eagle call that you hear in the movies,
Yeah.
of the call of the wild, and it kind of slurs at the end and trails. And yeah, I really cannot imitate, but I hear them even more now, and I can hear them just calling, and I didn't realize how vocal they were. They're always screaming, and I'm wondering, why are you always screaming? So now I have to figure this out more. And what really made me aware was this one particular day that I was out at my restoration site, and it was a really, really foggy day. It's the sort of day where you can't see the Golden Gate Bridge at all, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this one red-tailed hawk that I first heard screaming into the void. I thought of it as screaming into the void because everything was gray. And then I was walking along and I hear the bird screaming again, except from a different place. And it happened 4 times that day. The bird would be in a different place screaming over and over into the void. And I was just like, this is funny. The bird keeps going to different trees and screaming. And Don't know what it was about, but it was really funny. And then at one point it was getting the bird began flying away and they were getting chased by this little tiny hummingbird. It was really funny. And so now I just hear them out and about. And I also love, sometimes it seems like they have a sort of way of working with each other if they're already sort of together. And because I see them getting chased a lot by the crows as well, as y'all know. And then there was this one time where one kept on screaming as it was chased through the sky by the crows. And then their friend showed up and then they began like swirling together and then the crows backed off and it was really cool. So I have a lot of questions and my plan is I'm going to go find that nest that they have the camera for in the Presidio so I can carefully study how to know that the nest is there, what the nest looks like, if there's any activity. And then that way I'm going to try to become the nest spotter because I'd really like to know where they nest. So that way, if I look at the one that is established and well known, then maybe I can spot all of the lesser known ones. So that's my plan.
That's great. So you're saying that by paying attention and to your bird of the year, you had this image at first of like hawks are majestic, and now you're realizing they're not always. they're also pretty funny. And I wonder those birds in the fog. Susan wrote in the chat, Marco Polo. Maybe that was the way of them finding each other through the fog. I'm wondering now.
Maybe that would be really funny. I'll have to pay attention to see if they're screaming at each other next time and if that influences how they're interacting. One thing I've realized is that I need more vocabulary to describe animal behavior. That's an area that is a serious growth edge for me, is that I don't know how to describe animal behavior. So that's something I need to learn.
Yeah. Anything specific about animal behavior?
Just interpreting the behavior, like knowing whether they're communicating to each other or not. Figuring out what territorial looks like versus what I guess playing looks like, or mating ritual, or just in general, what's the I'm hungry and flying around looking for food flight versus the I'm just flying around flight. And are there ever any, I don't know, I feel like I can't even describe it very well, because to me, looking at animal behavior feels like a completely different language that I have almost no base in. Maybe it's because I have a hard time reading people too. So yeah, I'm not sure what to make of animal behavior.
Well, I think, yeah, those are great questions. Now I think maybe I should do a workshop sometime on animal behavior in our nature journals. But yeah, I guess the one thing I want to say to everybody is that a lot of the time it is hard to know like what are animals doing and why are they doing it, and it can be really easy to make assumptions. So I think it's totally okay if you just use your observation skills and everything, like anything else that you're observing in your nature journal, and put down like what do you really notice. And you can see over time if you notice any patterns, or you can look up research and see what other people have noticed. But it's totally normal to not know, like, if this is this a mating thing? Is this an aggression thing? What's going on here? It's totally okay to not know that. In fact, I think it's better to not jump to conclusions if we don't really know the answer. Because there's often less pressure to feel like we need to have an explanation for what's going on. But it can take a long time to really notice these patterns and figure it out. And sometimes also the thing about like science works with, observing patterns and lots of data over a long period of time. But when you're talking about animal behavior, a lot of times it's these little anecdotes and moments that just happen, okay, maybe we can get a sense of what do hawks in general mean when they make this specific kind of call or do this specific flight. But like, I just saw a specific hawk over there doing something weird. Like, what was going on with that? Why was that specific hawk in that moment doing that thing? Sometimes you just never know. Like, why was that specific individual bird doing something weird, and why did it decide to do it right now? It's a lot of times we just never know.
Something,
Yeah.
sorry. Something just occurs to me too. Who else ever watches or used to watch those nature documentaries like on National Geographic or etc. on the TV? I used to watch the episodes of those things, and so I'm used to there being a narrator or an interpreter giving us the story of what the animal's doing. And it occurs to me that they always capture and show mostly just the really dramatic moments. And so then when the animals are just acting like normal, and usually sometimes you'll be lucky enough to get a long clip, but usually it's like a split second. So they're interpreting what based off of what they show us with only a split second. But when you're watching the animals do their own thing, then sometimes they wander in a weird direction and you're not sure why. They're like walking sideways, and then you're like, why is that animal walking sideways? And then the animal just like makes a weird noise and then walks a different way. And so then you're like, they never talk about this stuff. So
yeah, that's a really good point, Susan.
Oh, wasn't sure if I could. Yeah, I was going to add to that or emphasize that. Yeah, you're right. They show the dramatic moments, and they also show the moments that are easy to explain. So, like you say, the bits where it's confusing or you can't tell what's going on don't make for good television, I guess. But that's what's actually happening most of the time.
Yeah, another good point. So when we're out in nature in real life, like we're not just watching a clip, it hasn't been edited. It's not the highlight reel like you get in a documentary. It's just their lives. And not everything that I do in my entire life is like super interesting. Probably the same for the birds too. But that's also part of just I guess the joy of it and doing nature, like paying attention. Like we get to see all those little moments and those little things all these little mysteries. And yeah, we kind of just went into a longer discussion on that topic, but if anybody wants to share, raise your hand, or maybe put your name in the chat if you want to share. And if anybody has to go before 2 o'clock, I'll let you go first because we're almost at the hour, but I'll stay longer for anybody else. Otherwise, I'd be happy to continue this discussion on animal behavior. Deborah, would you like to share?
Not about my bird, but I don't know if familiar with
Yeah,
this book.
I have
It's
the book.
a handbook for writers, artists, and thinkers, Language Making Nature by David Lucas. So Ivea made me think of this book when she was saying she needed to come up with other words. And actually in here, he talks about creating your own words too. So, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. I've been using it more kind of like a resource. And anyhow, so it's an interesting book if you're interested in words or nature, I guess. That's it.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, I was when Yvette asked the question, I was thinking of thinking back to my animal behavior course, and I've got the textbook, and like, is there anything I can teach you guys about that? But yeah, I love how you also brought in that book because I didn't think of that. Can we make up some of our own words? And then oh, Jasmine learned that Junko has a Zuni story. The question about the cultural stories. There's a Zuni story called Coyote and Junko. Oh, I want to learn that story now. Yeah, and the book was Language Making Nature by David Lucas. I definitely recommend it. I felt like when I got that book, if I felt like getting a new watercolor set or something to play with like that, except it was with words instead of colors. Would anybody else like to share about your bird of the year? Any new thoughts or insights from our class, or just anything else that you want to share? Is there anything? Oh, I see Linda, I see your hand, and then before I forget, I'm going to read Jasmine's story from the chat, if that's all right. So this is the story of Coyote and Junko, which Jasmine copied from a website. Coyote, while returning to his children, hears a Junko bird singing a song. He asks her to sing it for him so he can sing it for his children. He forgets the song 4 times and returns to Junko to hear it again, but the 4th time she refuses to sing for him. He bites the rock she's hiding in and his molars fall out. He later returns to his children who have died. Oh, that's a sad ending. I guess the lesson there is if somebody is sharing information with you, you should pay attention the first time and not have them tell you 4 times. And then Susan says that I'll get back to you, Linda. Susan says, I heard a lovely Indigenous story about why the hermit thrush had a lovely song, but has rarely seen. I love that song. I have that story about how the hermit thrush got its song. That's one of the few stories that like I can tell if I'm at a campfire or something, and like I just want to tell you a story. Like I've learned the whole thing. I've told it. Maybe I don't know. I probably shared it around here sometime. There's actually really cool. A couple times I've told that story and then heard a hermit thrush, and it's like in the woods. And yeah, I don't know. It's like there's the idea that by telling the story or like drawing the picture, you're kind of like drawing the animals to you. Like I don't necessarily believe that, but it's kind of cool that it happened that way. Okay, Linda, thank you for waiting. Would you like to share now?
This has really been good. I didn't see your first workshop about Bird of the Year, but I know there was some discussion in this nature journal circles, pencil miles and stuff too. And my Bird of the Year was hummingbird. I think it was in February when I learned about this. And I came home from grocery shopping one day, and the first bird that I saw outside the back patio door was a hummingbird. And I thought, okay, that's my Bird of the Year. I'm pretty familiar with the hummingbird behavior around here. This workshop today has kind of kickstarted me into continuing with my phenology wheel of birds that I was going to do this year. And so far in my wheel, I have 0. So drawing birds, I find intimidating, but my husband keeps encouraging me to draw them because I love birds so much. So yeah, I'm going to get going with it, get caught up, and it will be a good way to practice drawing birds.
Oh, good luck with your bird drawing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing an example of a bird of the year that you didn't get on January 1st, but you still got one. I think that's great. Yeah, would anybody else like to share? Or does anybody want to respond to what Linda shared or what anybody has shared?
Just wanted to say Just want to say you've totally got this, Linda. I think sometimes it can be hard to do the thing, especially if we're nervous about starting it. And so sometimes just even steering our mind back towards, okay, I'm still going to think about starting this. Eventually it gives you that push. And so you got this. Just wanted to say that. And also hummingbirds are awesome. Love, yeah. Those birds I find a little bit easier to interpret their behavior because they're so direct about what they do. So you have hummingbird chase, just at light speed, lightsaber battle in the air. And then they come back, they drink, they sit there, they look cute, they poop in front of you, and then you feel really honored, and then they fly away. And so, yeah, just hummingbirds are awesome.
I would
And
add
they
to that.
Oh, I was going to say, and they chase hawks.
Maybe we need a story where Evea's bird of the year and Linda's bird of the year get into a fight.
Or your bird of the year too, both
That's
Linda and
true.
Rebecca's
That's
birds.
very true.
Maybe we need to create a story where Rebecca and Linda's birds team up to chase my bird
Ooh.
all across the sky.
Actually, I just remembered a cool thing happened when I was in Montana this year. We rented this house. My whole family, we were all visiting. We rented this house, and it had this back deck, and it overlooked this sort of a hill, and there's a bunch of lodgepole pines and all kinds of stuff. And all of a sudden, we saw, I think it was an osprey, flew across to the top of a trunk, and it had something in its feet, so it was probably a fish. It's trying to eat it, and then this crow starts harassing it, and it keeps trying to eat, and finally it gives up and flies off. And then the crow is like, good job, me. And then a moment later, another bird, smaller bird, comes flying through and starts like her chasing the crow. And we actually, like, they kept flying sort of underneath where past where the house was, but I couldn't see it. And then they come back into view. And finally, I managed to get the binoculars at the same time as the smaller bird actually landed for a moment. I saw it was a northern flicker, which was smaller than the crow and was chasing it off. So it was I feel like the flicker was like teaming up with you. It's like, you're going to chase off my friend, I'll show you. It's pretty amazing.
Now I'm just getting this image of like birds being chased by progressively smaller birds.
It's
Sort of like the,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say like the elephant and mouse phenomenon that people used to tell
yeah.
jokes about, the elephant and then the mouse, and then they're like, even though I'm sure that's just false. What were you gonna say, Rebecca?
I was just gonna say it reminds me of that story. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly, and except that, like the other way, I guess. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I feel like this would be a fantastic, like, children's book or something. Actually, I could see if, the hummingbird's the last one, and the hummingbird's like, well, nobody's smaller or tougher than me. And then a morning cloak butterfly shows up and is like, yeah, I'll fight you. I've seen morning cloaks. They are very fierce. They will chase
Really?
off butterflies bigger than them. They will chase off me.
I never heard or thought of a
They're pretty
butterfly being aggressive
Oh
before.
yeah, there's some that are really territorial, and they'll if you're standing in the place they want to be, they will like fly at you, and then morning cloaks will go straight like at your face, and then they'll kind of shoot off, and like I like we were saying, it is hard to tell what's aggression and what's not. And butterflies don't have great vision in general, but they're definitely, if I stand in a place where there are morning cloaks, they will repeatedly fly at me. And generally they won't land on me, and they're not flying at the tree trunks the same way. So they have to know that I'm something different than a tree trunk. And then if another butterfly comes by, they will chase after it. And what I've heard is that they are, at first it's just like, oh, something's flying by, we're going to try and either mate with it or chase it off, and we'll see which one we do after we start. Like they'll start chasing it, and if it turns into sex, then it's sex, and if it turns into chasing off the aggressor, they chased off the aggressor. Great. I can't tell if they're doing anything different, when it's a different species or what, but they're very tough. And there's a few species that are like that. They're very fierce.
just when I thought I couldn't admire butterflies more. I already got excited when I find out that they sometimes, that because they crave salt, that they like to sometimes drink blood. And so I think of them as being stained glass vampires. And now finding out that they chase off things and that they can be ferocious makes me so happy. Nature's so fun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you think of hummingbirds as mini gods. There's yeah, in Central America, cocoa is known as food of the gods, but it's not because chocolate tastes so good. It's because the flowers are food for hummingbirds, and when the hummingbirds is thought of as a yeah. Also, they're thought of. I guess as like gods, and also they're often seen as like the souls of dead. I don't know if it's just dead warriors or just people in general are seen as like hummingbirds are like their souls, but I think there's also a thing with them being seen as a god also, or there's a maybe it's not that all hummingbirds, but I think there is like a hummingbird god, and that's why it's called food of the gods.
Well, there's also, I mean, there's hummingbirds in a lot of different places, and probably a lot of different indigenous cultures have a variety of different stories about them probably. So they might be all gods, there might be just one god, there might be souls of dead warriors, maybe all different cultures may have all different tales about them. All true.
Part of me wants to say the name like Huitzilopochtli. Is that a potential god that was based off of a hummingbird, or am I getting that one mixed up?
Maybe. I mean, that sounds like an Aztec name, but I'm not sure the exact name.
I keep thinking Quetzalcoatl, but that's a winged serpent, so never mind.
Well, I'll just ask again while there's a pause if anybody else would like to share about your bird or any thoughts you have, any questions you want to learn about, any questions about birds in general or nature in general. Deborah?
So are you going to have a gathering or get together at the end of the year then also?
You think I should? See some nodding. I could do that.
Okay.
I hadn't really thought that far ahead, to be honest. But I'll do it if there's interest. Yes, please, so we can share everything we've learned. Yeah, that would be fun. And say goodbye to our birds, which might be emotionally hard. Yeah, I've done this for a few years now. My birds have been cardinal, robin, great horned owl, and crow. And no, there was also chickadee in the middle there. So this will be the 5th year. Yeah. But yeah, it can be a little bit hard. I think this is probably the year I've been paying the most attention.
You could think of it as you're collecting them. So it's not, you don't have to say goodbye. It's just that you're now, collecting a new bird of the year, but you get to keep the old bird of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you just get like a close relationship with all of these birds over time. It's like, oh, hello, Jean or Jean, I think. We're just discussing now about our birds and birds in general. You know what it reminds me of now with like, it's like we're collecting birds of the year. If you do it over multiple years, it's reminding me of, has anybody read Percy Jackson? And they have the Camp Half-Blood necklaces where they get a new bead on the necklace it's like they go to the summer camp for like demigods. One of their parents is a Greek god, but it's super dangerous. Yeah, every year at the camp they get another bead on their necklace showing like one of the most important things that happened that year. So now I'm thinking our bird of the year is like that. It just keeps adding on. Yeah, you could make a literal bead necklace if you wanted to. That could be cool. Or you could
Well,
just get like a wooden bead and draw a little doodle on it.
So there you go. Yeah, there's lots of ways. Think about beads. You can make them out of almost anything.
Deborah,
I was
what were you gonna
thinking,
say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it's a time to thank the bird for being the bird.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Susan, what were you saying?
oh, well, I was just observing that this whole idea, I think, is a very good thing, because there are certain birds that I see so commonly, probably some of the first ones that I learned to identify their species, like robin, mallard ducks, crows, and things, that because they're so common around and I'm just, I see them all the time, I tend not to pay that much attention to them. I get much more excited about the green heron or the catbird, which is fairly common, but it's not, you don't see it, in suburbia that much. So, but the first bird you see in the year is likely going to be one of those fairly common ones that's right outside your door, that's there in the winter, that's, so it's a good, I think it's a good sort of reason to actually pay attention to that bird and learn more about it, even though it's more common. I tend to be like, oh, what's that bird? Oh, it's a robin. Okay. But like, I should pay attention to robins. Robins are great. They do all kinds of interesting things. I should pay more attention to them.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for bringing up that point, Susan.
I'm sorry I'm late. I did it
No
again.
problem. No problem.
I didn't get a bird of the year because I missed the last one.
Yeah, though, you can still get one if you want to. So in the first workshop back at the beginning or the end of last year, the idea is like the first bird you see is your bird of the year. Or you can pick one if you really want a specific bird. There's no rule.
Okay.
But you could even do just like when you go outside today or sometime, what's the first bird you see? That could be your bird of the year. And yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I shared earlier it was like 8 hours left in the year last year, and a mourning dove flew by, and he was like, hey, can a mourning dove be my bird of the year for 2021? And I was like, I mean, sure. What's your bird of the year for the next 8 hours? So
Well,
it's
I've been
definitely
housebound for a while, so
yeah.
the best I've seen is a pigeon. I'm in New York.
Do you live in the city?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I live in Syracuse.
I know it well. But yes, seagulls we see a lot also. So I could choose a gull.
Yeah, so then that could be something, even if you're stuck in the house and you can't really go anywhere to see rare birds, you can still watch the pigeons and the seagulls.
Right. And when I am able to get out, I'm a volunteer at the zoo, and we have peacocks who walk all over the place. And
Oh, fun.
yeah. So we have lots of nice birds. So I'll choose one of those.
Yeah, that's great. I hope that you can have some fun with that and get to know that bird just a little bit better over the rest of the year. Oh, Eva, do you have something to show?
What you were saying about some of the birds in the commentary has made me think about this book that I just a friend, well, actually my godmother gave it to me the other day, called The Private Lives of Public Birds, learning to listen to birds where we live. And so the idea about this is that even if a bird is very common, then we can still learn a lot about it and appreciate it. So this one talks about everything from the California towhee and the scrub jay to the American crow, to the mourning dove, to birds that just might seem very ordinary because we see them all of the time, but just that they're all still very special. So it just reminded me when you were saying that. Yeah.
Well, we underestimate birds dramatically. They are much, much, much smarter than most people think they are, because they have 5 times the neuron density of the average mammal. So their brains are really, really highly developed,
Yeah,
which
I
makes
remember.
sense,
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
I used to look at birds and say, I looked at them building a nest, and I would say, how does an animal with a brain the size of a peanut know how to build that? And the answer is their brains are actually effectively much larger than they look.
So 5 times the neuron density.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I remember reading I have the book The Genius of Birds over there, and it also talks about how like bird brains and mammal brains are just structured so differently from each other that it's not proportional. Like intelligence is not proportional to size of the brain, or even size in proportion to, you know, the body. Obviously, a whale has a much bigger brain, but um yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So I give them a lot of respect.
That's great.
Do you
I seem to
know?
have shut down the conversation.
Oh, no, it's been up and down even since before you got in. We like get onto a little tangent and then it's like been quiet for a minute and then somebody shares and we get into another conversation. But were you just about to say something? Go ahead, Christian.
Do you know the story why the goldfinch, which is my bird of the year, is so colorful?
No, but and yours is a European goldfinch, isn't it?
Yes, the European
Yeah.
goldfinches.
So it's a different
They are
species. But no, I don't know that story.
they are yellow and black and white, so very contrasting colors, and have in their faces a red point. And so the story goes that God, when he created the world, he painted the animals with colors, and the goldfinch came late, and God said, sorry, I have no colors for you. You must fly without them. And the goldfish finch was very sad and begged and said, look, you have something left here and there, and give me that these colors. And so God does this, and the goldfinch is so colorful now. And I like them very much. And I thought a time about what Avaya said about animal behavior, and you don't know, do they something on purpose, or have they kind of leisure time or fun, or is it all about survival? And as a kid, I had, what do you call it, a canary? Canary
Yeah,
bird,
canary.
the canary bird, the yellow ones. And they are very similar to the goldfinch. Actually, they were crossed with goldfinch to make the songs and the voices better. And when you live with an animal which is in a cage, unfortunately, but it behaves very like it will be outside, and so you learn. I know when he was alarmed, or when he was content, or and the several sounds for it, or when he was surprised or excited because I came with his favorite food or something like that. And I think maybe that's my connection to these goldfinches, which are very always fighting on our feeder for the sunflower seeds and make much noise, and they are so little, and and they have such voices, and the little ones are I don't know, endlessly without taking a breath or something like that. And I like them very much. And I just Googled about your question, what can I do for them apart from doing my planting sunflowers and other flowers with seeds. And I discovered that even now in Germany, they were captured and put in cages because of their colors and their nice voices. And I will go further this about this information, how one can do something against this. And I haven't any bird in a cage anymore as an adult, because I don't like this anymore. Yes, so this is my little story about my bird of the year.
Wow, that would be so interesting if that was there were any similarities between the different kind of sounds that the canary makes and the different kind of sounds that the goldfinches make. So that's still going on there, still capturing the goldfinches to sell them as pets and things in Germany. Wow. I didn't know that. I wonder if there's anything, wonder if there's any people who are like trying to stop that, or what's the situation. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And welcome, Paula. We're just discussing our birds now. You can let us know if you'd like, if you have a bird of the year, or what you've learned about it, or what you want to still learn. You can put something in the chat or raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with. So yeah, does anybody else want to respond to Christian's story?
I love that story about about their colors, about your bird's colors. So I looked it up because I just had to see what were the colors that were left over. And you're right, they're so colorful and lovely. It's really fun to see that bird.
Oh, it also reminded me, there's a similar story. I forget which culture specifically, but that a Native American story about how the birds got their colors. Would you guys want to hear it? The brief version
Sure.
I can share. So this might be an Iroquois, like Haudenosaunee story. I don't remember. But basically the story is that the birds wanted to get some feathers, get some colorful clothing to wear. And so out of all the birds they picked, turkey vulture would be kind of the messenger, would go fly up to visit the creator, and yes, turkey vultures, and would go fly up to visit the creator and ask for the birds to get some feathers. So it was a long and hard journey, but Turkey Vulture flew all the way up to the sky and even flew past the sun, which is why his head got burned and why his head is pink color now. So he flew up to and then the creator asked the Turkey Vulture, or he said, since you are the one who flew up here and, you know, you made the journey, you get their first pick. You can pick out of all of these suits of clothing that I created. You can choose which one you want first before, you know, I distribute them to all the rest of the birds. So Turkey Vulture, he thought, well, he needs to pick the best clothing because he was the one who did it. So he tried on a bright red suit that had a cap on top. And it was really pretty, but he said, I bet there's something that's even better. Oh, but he also was given a rule. You can try on as many as you want, but once you take one off, it's going to another bird. You can't put it back on a second time. So he took off the red suit, that went to the cardinal. And then he tried on a blue one and it was really pretty, but he still thought there was probably something even better. So he took off that one and that went to the blue jay. And he also tried on a yellow one, which was really bright and pretty, but he took that one off too. And that one went to the goldfinch. So he kept trying on all of the different outfits and kept thinking there's something even better that, you know, what's deserving of the, you know, messenger of all the birds who made this long journey. So finally he tried one on that was the worst of all. It was kind of dingy and dark colored, and it didn't even fit. It was too small. It didn't even cover his head. And he was like, oh, this one is the worst of all of them. I definitely need to choose something other than that. But then the creator said, this is the last one. You've already tried all of the other outfits. There is nothing else to try. So that's how Turkey Vulture got stuck with that outfit. And that's the story.
I've always felt turkey vultures look like they're wearing a sort of a cloak with the way that their wings are so big and kind of cover the whole body. So that I can picture that like he's wearing an outfit. That's great.
Right. And not having feathers on his head actually is an advantage to a bird that spends time with its head buried in carcasses.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he should have stuck with the one that already had part of his name on it. If he just had picked the turkey costume, that's
right.
Of all of them.
That's true. It would still keep the head clear, and it would have the
and
some
it's
of
so
the iridescent
beautiful. It has
color.
like, yeah.
The linebackers. Yeah, so it's interesting. There are these two pretty similar stories of how the turkey vulture got the feathers and how the goldfinch got the feathers. Oh, Susan, I'll spotlight you. What are you showing us? Oh, is that a turkey vulture? You're muted.
Yeah, so we see turkey vultures at the pine bush all the time, but they're always overhead, and I know they must, land in some places. I just don't see them. But yeah, on my trip, I finally got to see some turkey vultures actually hanging out in a dead tree, and got to see them up close. They were pretty awesome. So, yeah.
Where do you live?
I live in upstate New York, but I just went on a trip out
Near
to,
Albany?
Yes.
Because as soon as you said the pine bush,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I thought that might be where you were.
Yeah. Are you?
I used to live up there.
Oh,
I lived
wonderful.
up there for 12 years. I lived in I lived across from the Empire State Plaza.
Oh, okay. Right. On like Rensselaer or?
I was
Riverfleet,
actually literally across the street.
Okay,
I was
no,
on
across the
Lawrence
river.
Street.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And you could, the egg was, you could
Wow.
look at the egg if you stepped out my door.
Wow, nice. Yeah, well, that's Pine Bush is a pretty special place. So yeah, but yeah, I
Yes.
just went just was on a trip out to Montana and back, and so I made a lot of stops along the way. I got to see some cool things.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was
But it
very
was just like my
excited.
ears perked up when you said Pine Bush, and I
Oh yes,
said,
well,
I know where that
Rebecca
she lives.
also is,
If you're not from New York, there's this cool theater in Albany called the Egg, which is kind of egg shaped. Like the building itself is egg shaped. Now I'm wondering if you ever could see like a vulture or a hawk just sitting on top of the egg,
Ooh.
because I think that would be funny.
Yeah, it would.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's there's plenty of pigeons in that sort of general area, so there'd be food for them. So
Sure.
maybe the pigeons hang out there. I don't know.
Oh, and Linda, I hope that you get to see the condors.
Yeah, good
That would
luck.
be awesome. Good luck.
Yeah, they're so cool. Oh, speaking of that, so Thursday's session with Jack when he's coming back is going to be about birds of Argentina. So hopefully we'll get some Indian condors.
Mm.
That'll be so exciting.
That would be cool. I wonder if he's seen one. I think it's an
I
Indian
think
condor.
he's
It's in
doing
the
it
zoo.
with Gail, isn't he? So and Gail has definitely seen them because he's mentioned it. That's so exciting.
Maybe.
Wait, you think Jack might be seeing Indian condors tomorrow? Is he in the Galapagos still? Are they there, or is he going to?
I can't remember exactly where he's going tomorrow. He's currently in the Galapagos. I think he might be visiting an island he's never seen before. But then he said that before he leaves on Saturday, that he's going to be, he and the group are going to be going to see specifically Andean condors, because they are the national bird of several countries in South America, one of which being Ecuador. And so I talked to him really briefly, and I was telling him that Gael will be really, really excited about that. So I think it's neat that he's going to be doing that presentation with Gael as well, so they can gush about the Andean condors. Whenever I hear that, I also cheer on our own California condors. So I hope that
Absolutely.
you have a wonderful time seeing them, Linda. I hope you get. There was this one time I was taking this thing called Natural History Field Quarter, and we went to the Pinnacles briefly, and I think we were lucky enough to see just one California condor, which for a lot of us was really special. Whenever you see a species that came that close to extinction, then you see them living free, then you're like, I hope that we see
Seeing
that
a
for always.
significant fraction of all the California condors that exist when you see that one. So that's amazing.
It's true.
And then finding out that several, but then by contrast, finding out that several countries in South America have the Andean condor as their bird, it's kind of like, so there's a place where they're not, like, where our angels of carry-on, who clean up everything and do all of the hard work that nobody acknowledges, are praised by several countries, and that they're plentiful in several countries. It's kind of like, that's nice. We need to treat our California condors the same way.
I saw something, just a brief headline. I need to research it, but up in extreme Northern California, where the Yurok nation is, they are, I think, introducing California condors for the first time. So
That's nice.
I have to look into that, but that's what I saw.
Well, I think there was an
Cool.
article from Cornell Living Bird recently. It might be the same article you're talking about.
Maybe.
Oh, I love what Susan just put in the chat. Susan Nelson. There's a 60-year-old Indian condor at the Tracy Aviary in Salt Lake. He has a Facebook page under the name Andy N. Condor. I saw him as a child, and I'm old. That's amazing. I didn't know they could live that long. Wait, that's Salt Lake, that's in Utah.
Some birds are incredibly long. There's an albatross. It's like
Wisdom?
70 or 80.
Yeah.
And parrots can live 60 and 70 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
well, maybe we should chalk it up to, you know, a good diet of carrion and bones, and start trying to live like the condors.
Yeah. Oh, gee, I'm gonna have to run, and I got here late, but I'm sorry.
No problem. I'm so glad that you were here, and I'll share the recording in a few days.
Okay, that's
You'd like
great.
to watch
Thank
the
you.
rest.
Take care.
Bye.
In case anybody's curious, the Indian Condor is a national symbol for Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, which is making me wonder, why not Argentina? Why are they too good for the Indian Condors? I mean, they have a huge part of the range, but whatever.
Well, I mean,
I wonder what
I
their
wonder
bird
if
is.
Peru got all the Andes. Isn't it right? Like Argentina is here, and then Peru is like just the mountainous part, isn't it? Or no, I'm sorry, that's Chile. But I guess the Indian Condor really lives in other places too.
It's the hornero, an oven bird. That's their bird.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's great.
I
Maybe they
wonder
just wanted to be different.
The Rufus hornero. That's really cool.
cool. Yeah, now I'm wondering what's the story
Oh, I
behind
know.
why that bird was picked.
I still think our national bird should have been turkey.
Yeah,
Golden
I'm
bird,
kind of
no.
with you, Susan.
No.
Did
Actually, okay,
everybody
so
know? Go,
go
go.
ahead.
I was just gonna ask, like, does everybody know that the turkey was considered for our national bird? Yeah, go on, Susan.
Oh, so Rebecca, you might know if you've been in the Capitol, and I'm sorry, I missed who was it? Was it it was Jean who had to leave, but and if anyone's been to the New York State Capitol building in Albany, the Capitol building is very, very lovely and very ornate, with all kinds of decoration on it, and there's this big set of steps on the side going down to the river. And if you walk around it, on one side of the steps, there's just all these like carvings and things. It's all very ornate. And there's this carving of this very ornate eagle. It's got the wings spread, and it's got this beak and everything. And it's this eagle sort of set into the, like, underneath where the steps are. And on the other side of the steps, if you look in the same spot, there's a similarly ornate carving of a turkey. And you can tell it's got the tail fanned out and everything, and it's so cool. So if you haven't seen that, next time you come to Albany, you should check it out. It's really cool.
I actually didn't know that. I've been to the New York State Museum in Albany, but I haven't been to the Capitol building itself.
I've never been
I would
inside the
definitely-
Capitol building, but it's really interesting. Sometimes I've just been there because I've had to get the bus from there.
Bye, Linda.
Oh, bye. But yeah, it's like all of the carving on it, like there's like all these like, I don't know, not plinth, what's the word I'm looking for? Where there's like the posts that sort of, and they all have similar designs with, like, I think it's acanthus leaves or whatever it is. That's very common, that kind of carving. But every one of them is different, but symmetrically carved. I'm obsessed with that building. It's just beautiful.
Oh, interesting.
But
It's
the turkey and the eagle,
pillars.
huh?
I think
Like the pillars, yeah,
on like the
yeah.
Greek kind of like class.
Yeah, like, and the base of each one is totally different, but you can see where there's similarities, and it's, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I think the ones with the leaves, is that called Corinthian style pillars? I don't know. I'll have to double
Yeah,
check.
sure. But that
That's
that
cool.
kind
Anyway.
of leaf, if it's very stylized, I think it's acanthus. I think is the leaf that shows up in those motifs. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's
Oh, I
very cool.
don't know.
But the eagle and the turkey on the sides of the steps are very cool. My favorite. I didn't just discover that. Like, somebody told me that, and I went and looked at it. I was like, oh yeah, there they are. So I like to think whoever designed the Capitol was like, wanted to reflect that question of which bird should be the national bird.
That's great. I like that the idea of national birds come up in this conversation too, because I think it's like we can almost think of our bird of the year. It's like that's our own personal national bird just for the year. It's like similar kind of idea. what like not that represents us, because national bird's supposed to like kind of represent the country, but just like learning something from them. List of all the national birds. Interesting. And then there's also the state birds in the United States. I don't know if other countries have state birds as well. A surprising number that are unofficial.
Ooh, Antigua and Barbuda have magnificent frigate bird, which is I
Oh,
always feel is a you know, like is just sort of unnecessarily redundant, because I mean, aren't frigate birds all magnificent? Do we need to say it?
good point. Oh, barn swallow for Austria.
I'm a little shocked that Canada does not have an official one.
Oh,
Yeah, they're working on that. I think there's been a lot of conversation the past few years about what they should pick as a national bird. I believe there's been some proponents for the gray jay, I think, as the national bird,
ooh.
but I don't think they've decided yet.
So it says Canada Jay has been suggested.
Canada jay, that's not the gray jay. The Canada jay. Or
Although
maybe
it
they
is
call it
gray.
there. There might be a
It's
different name.
suggested by Canadian Geographic Magazine, a proposal not acknowledged by federal government. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the status is on that discussion of the Canadian bird. Oh, it's interesting. China's was proposed in 2007 and still not official.
I appreciate that France's is the Gallic rooster, which is a domestic bird whose ancestors, as far as I know, have not ever been in France, apart from the domesticated bird that we now have. But then again, it's been a it's been present as a domestic bird in France for a very long time. So. So many cool birds. Now we're all just laughing the silence, but we're all looking at all the cool birds.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that some places, that some places, like you say, will have a bird that feels very representative of our ideals as a country. I feel like that was the choice of the bald eagle, was like, let's have a majestic bird of prey that's fierce, and then whether or not I feel like a bird that is not unique to the U.S. and but is also interesting. But then some countries have picked, for example, New Zealand has the kiwi, which I think is a very reasonable choice for a national bird, but also is like, very quiet and shy and unassuming, and doesn't fly, and just kind of, hides in the shadows in the dark. And
Yeah. I wonder if that tells us anything about the different ideals of the different countries.
or,
And then
or the ideal being whether or not they feel that the bird has to be some kind of showy, impressive thing. Like,
yeah. Then Ifea's got showing us a book about the different state birds from the United States.
If
So
yeah,
the blue, like New York is our bird.
because at first I was looking at New York, and then I'm like, where's New York? And then I realized it's because they just listed it over here with Missouri.
oh, so they're going by bird and not by state.
Or just by like Missouri came first, so they listed New York with Missouri because you both have the Eastern bluebird as your bird.
So they're grouping. So they're grouping together like all the states that have that as their state bird.
Yeah,
that's the bird. I see.
So that's really cool. That's y'all's state bird. And
What's
other
California's?
I believe last I checked it was the quail, which makes me really sad because we used to have a
Quails
quail.
are great. No.
Oh no, I mean I love quails. It's just that we used to have San Franciscan quails, and then they disappeared, and there was one
Oh.
final one. So hearing about the California quails makes me all sad because we don't have ours anymore in San Francisco.
Was that
Yeah.
a subspecies?
It might have been. I'm not entirely sure. I have to do some research. But yeah, we used to have quails here, but then the feral cats ate them all.
Oh, we used to see them occasionally on the wall behind our house. They would all go in line and go.
So cute.
Love them so much.
Are there any other states here aside from California and New York? Sorry.
Yeah, does anyone want to check your state bird?
I can give
think
you
it
a list
might
of all the states I passed through, but somebody else should go first.
That would be
Yes.
interesting to know too.
Because I want to make sure I'm representing everybody. I don't know where Mel or Paula are from. Oh, Texas. Okay, I'll check out Texas. And then I know that Christine,
Oh, and then Utah is
Christian.
where the turkey
Christine.
is.
because Christiane is from Germany, and so your bird is the golden eagle, which is like really cool. Oh yeah, here we go. Texas. Texas shares with Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Texas all have the mockingbird.
Hmm.
So cool.
Yeah,
Mockingbirds are so awesome.
Yeah.
This is neat. That means that like they have the coolest songs. So that's Texas's state bird. That's really cool.
It's really cool from my perspective to see the illustration of the mockingbird on the, like, what is that, an epiphyte kind of plant on the, this tropical or subtropical kind of plant.
Yeah.
We don't have here. We have mockingbirds. We don't have those kind of plants. So it's cool to see those two together. It's like,
I
there's where
agree.
my
That's
mockingbird
cool.
goes in the winter.
But I thought I looked it up, but I thought that mockingbirds don't migrate.
Or do they? I don't think I see them here all year.
I have seen one in like February, and I think I looked it up at that point. But I wonder if maybe some of them do, some of them don't, or something.
I know I usually don't see them all year, but some birds also, like, there's different, this is a whole other topic, but there are different types of migration. Like some birds migrate, all the way from the Arctic to the tropics or something like that, but some do more regional migrations, or some do kind of like a leapfrog kind of style where some will go south and then the ones that are here in the winter will go more south, and they're just different patterns of it. So I wonder if the mockingbird does something like that. Like maybe it goes a little bit south, but not like some. Also, isn't the Albany area, the Pine Barrens, a little bit warmer, like slightly warmer climate than here? Because the pine bush is, I remember it being like a lot hotter in the summer when I worked there than it is over here because of the sandy soil and all of that.
Lack of shade.
Lack of shade.
I'm not. I think because if you go to like Hunger Kill and some of those areas where it's all wooded, I feel like it's comparable to the other places. But I'm not really sure now. I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't go out and test it right now, but we can go test it. But actually, now I'm realizing now when I was looking it up, I guess I wasn't actually looking up whether they migrate or not. I was looking at the range map in Sibley, which shows the mockingbird present in most of the U.S. year-round, but that doesn't mean it's the same birds. That might just mean, like you say, that it's birds that were in Canada coming down to the northern U.S. and birds in the northern U.S. going down to the southern U.S. And it could be just a bunch of birds just all moving south a bit, but still having mockingbirds in the area. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map now and all about birds. If you get any, I can share my screen. So yeah, it says resident. It's showing basically the whole continental US as its range. And then yeah, in purple all year. Whereas blue, it's just there in the winter. But yeah, I mean, it's also possible that it is here in the winter and I just never noticed, because that's kind of how it is with wildlife and learning about birds or anything in nature too. Is like some things you don't know, but it doesn't, like even things that you think you know well, there's always you can learn new things about it that you just never noticed before.
Well, and they may not be singing so much in the winter or at all in the winter, perhaps. And they're just not as noticeable because they they may be just sort of not being as active or something, perhaps.
Yeah, but yeah, I still don't think I've observed them in the winter here, but again, it's always possible that I could be wrong or I could have missed something.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also possible. I think I've only seen one in the winter, and only a few at other times. I know they're fairly common around here, but it doesn't mean I see them a ton. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
One of
interesting.
my favorite experiences, I went out to a parking lot at my university, and there was a car alarm going off, and it was one of those ones that does a bunch of different it's doing all the different noises, and it was going on and on and on. I'm looking around, and I'm trying to figure out what car it is, because it was like so close, and it was just going on and on and on. Nobody was stopping it, and I finally figured out the car was in a tree. It was just a very virtuoso mockingbird that had picked up a whole bunch of different car alarm noises.
So yeah, this is the All About Birds website while we're here. For anybody I mentioned earlier, this could be a really great resource to learn more about birds. It's one of the resources I used when I was first learning about birds. And you can go, every species has, it goes way more in depth than a typical field guide in a book. You can get how to ID it, a bunch of maps, sounds, and then it has these different categories of information. That's habitat, what does it eat, really detailed information about the nests. What are the nests like, what materials, how many eggs are there, how long does it take for the eggs to hatch, what are they like when they're born, are they kind of helpless, are they the kind of birds that can walk right away, are they blind and helpless, what kind of behaviors do they do, which goes back to our conversation earlier. This can be a good starting point to just see what are some of the common behaviors that you might see. And then the conservation. So this is mockingbirds have declined about 7.7% per year, so about 30% between 1966 and 2019, which is a lot, but it says they're still common and widespread and have rebounded a lot from lows in the 19th century when many were taken to be sold as singing cage birds. So yeah, it sounds like that shorter time period of 1966 to 2019, they've declined, but it's still been an overall increase from the past 100 years. So they're considered low concern, which is good for mockingbirds. I think Germany, Mexico, Albania, Scotland, and Serbia all have the golden eagle as the national bird. And the golden eagle, I think, I saw a picture.
Huge range, don't they? They're like all over the world.
And I think there's some story in Mexico with the golden eagle about how it helped, because the Mexico City, which is the capital, was also the Aztec capital before it became Mexico. And I think there's a story about how the Aztec people came to the land that became their capital city on Tenochtitlan. Is that the right word now? I'm forgetting. That was the island in the lake. And I was there in before the pandemic. There was a statue near the city square that showed the people. I think it was a statue of the people with the eagle in it. There was something about, there was like a prophecy or something that said when you get to the place where the eagle is, that's your home. And I think that's the story. I might be mixing up, but there was something like that. I need to look this up now. Oh, now this I'm finding on the Smithsonian, there's an article that says archaeologists unearthed 600-year-old golden eagle sculpture at the Aztec temple. Golden eagles, there's a nesting pair of them in Santa Cruz where you lived. One almost ran into you during a storm.
That was funny. I was walking in between a couple of buildings and I could tell that the wind was blowing this bird really hard because the bird was like swerving through the air. It almost ran into me. I think this one was a she, so she almost ran
When
into
your
me.
wings are the size of sails, as it turns out.
They're huge. I mean, you see birds of prey in the sky, and then one, for whatever reason, gets close. Like, there was this one time, this was a few years ago, though. This was here in San Francisco, and my son and I were walking over to my job at Kersey Field Center. And I hear this ruckus and I see some crows chasing a hawk, a red-tailed hawk, and I'm going, go Tobias, go Tobias. Well, then Tobias abruptly drops beneath the tree line and flies so close that if I'd reached out my arm, I probably could have touched the wingtips. Tobias has a bigger wingspan than I do, or at least it felt that way, and goes flying right past. And poor Logan screams and runs like he's being attacked by a pterodactyl. And then he was mad at me for the rest of the day. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's still mad at me when I tell that story. But I mean, it came like he or she came down right at eye level. It's so cool. And they're big. They're so big.
Awesome.
I always think of the movie The Rescuers Down Under, where the kid befriends this one. That's like only a slight exaggeration, I feel like, in terms of the size of it. Like, they can't quite carry a little child on their back, but they can certainly carry off a child in their claws if they want to. They carry off little goats and things.
So this says
Not to frighten your son more, but
that according to legend, the Aztec, or the people, they were a nomadic tribe visited by a god named it might be pronounced Huitzilopochtli in a dream. Is that right? Do you know that? Yay! Okay, yeah, so the god told the leader that they would eventually come across an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a snake, and that would be their new home. So yeah, that was the statue I saw in that's in Lake Texcoco, which became their capital, Tenochtitlan, and so they're in that capital city, which is still Mexico City today. There's a statue near the city center, which is where these temples, or there's still the remains of one of the temples. I think the others were destroyed, but there's still the remains of one, and there's a really awesome museum there. And so there's a statue like right there that it showed the eagle on the cactus eating the snake, which is also what's in the Mexico flag. If you see that's the image on the flag of Mexico, is the eagle eating the snake, I think. And then it showed the statue had, I think, like some of the people like looking at or pointing at the eagle. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is really neat. I love that story.
Let's see if I can
About
find a statue.
about Tenochtitlan and how they founded it.
Wait, let's do the flag also.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm reading a little bit more about Huitzilopochtli now, and it says that that in his iconography, he's either represented as a hummingbird or as an anthropomorphic figure with just the feathers of a hummingbird on his head and left leg, and also holding a scepter shaped like a snake, as well as an ear.
So
and
he's a hummingbird god.
He
So
is
it
the
all comes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yep. And also that he carries, in another variation, he carries around a fire serpent with him. This one's name I don't really, Quail, possibly. That's the first time I've heard that name. And I might be pronouncing Huitzilopochtli correctly, but I'm not sure because I heard it a long time ago. But that's so cool. I love all of these mythologies and how they connect to the nature around us. Just maybe there are people who never forget this stuff or who always know this, but every time I hear a story, it's like rediscovering it. It's so fun.
People tell it differently every time, and it's lovely.
Yeah. Well, these were not the statues that I saw, but these are some pretty cool ones too. Well, anyway, that's the story of the golden eagle in Mexico. Yeah, and all the different countries that picked it have like their own reasons, their own stories. Now I'm wondering why it's in Germany and those other places. Well, I should probably go soon because I have not had lunch and it's 3 o'clock here. But if anybody has any final thoughts or things that you want to say or share or ask, if anybody would also like to stay on, I can make somebody else the host. But I'm gonna end the recording now. So if you're watching the recording and you're still watching 2 hours into this, thanks for watching.